Hey everybody, Alex Kozora from SteelersDepot.com back for another weekly edition of Talk to the Tape. And obviously after a disappointing upset loss to the Chicago Bears, we could take this in a million different directions. But I wanted to circle back to a focus on the run game today. And I know I did a post on this Monday because we had some TV angles that gave us the end zone view that we were able to kind of lean on. But now that the All-22 came out, I thought it was a really good opportunity to kind of go through and take another look because, anytime you allow 220 yards on the ground to any team, much less a team that can't throw the ball like the way the Bears could on Sunday, I think it's worth re-examining and seeing what went wrong. And I think what we learned today, we have a ton of plays to go through. I think what we learned today is that there's a variety of issues, but I think there's also some stuff where Keith Butler, Steelers defensive coordinator, did not put these guys in the best position to succeed. Now, it's important to remember, anytime you allow as many yards as Steelers did, it's not all on one guy, it's not all on one coach, it's a combination of things. So that perspective is important to keep. It was bad across the board. You can point to a variety of issues, and you're going to see that in the video today. So we have a ton of plays to go through, and we're going to start talking about it now. A lot of what the Bears did, a lot of the damage came on these, outside zone stretch plays. And, one key for the defense is that run defense in general is an 11-man job. But anytime you're talking about these zone runs to the outside, everyone has to be perfect. Because the way a zone blocking scheme for an offense works is the running back does not have one gap to hit. There's not one hole to hit. He's reading the defense. He's reading the hats of, generally speaking, on this play in particular, just to throw it out there, the play side linemen and what they're doing. So if their hats both go down, he's going to bend it back. If they both come to the inside, he's going to bounce it outside. If one goes down, one goes the other way, he'll split the difference in between them. So, it's important for everybody to maintain their responsibility because the back's always going to try to be right. He's always going to try to just give where the defense takes them. So, you talk about some of the issues here. If one guy falters, it could blow everything up. So, first play we're going to look at here early in the game, kind of the first decent run that the Bears had. This two-back, run to the outside. I think there's a couple issues I want to look at here. One more front side, one kind of a backside play. Front side here, two defensive linemen, Tyson Alualu, Cam Hayward. I mean, this is key for run defense in general, whether we're talking man power schemes, whether we're talking zone schemes, doesn't really matter. You have to stay on your feet. You can't create lanes. You can't let the back be able to hit the hole earlier than what the defense wants to allow. If you're a defensive line, you want to build your fence, meaning you want to have a fence, metaphorically, where the running back has to stay on the line and stay wide. If there's any cracks in that fence he's able to come up and hit, then, you're putting yourself in a tougher position. And that's kind of what happens here, where you're going to see Alualu and Hayward, they both end up on the ground, and you just can't have that because it's going to create that lane. Anthony Chickillo does a pretty good job here as the force defender to force this play and keep it inside, but anytime you have two defensive linemen on the ground, the back's going to be able to hit the hole harder, the backside pursuit's not going to be able to get there in time, and whether you have a force player or not, it doesn't really matter. You've given a clear lane, and it's obviously wide open for Jordan Howard to hit for, I think this is, I forget how much it was, 13 or 17-yard gain to kind of kick things off early in the game, so I'll run it through for you guys. Basic stuff there. You just have to be able to not get reached and stay on your feet. The other issue, and this is really big again, talking about zone schemes, your backside players have to make an impact, have to take away those cutback lanes and scrape over, and you can't allow yourself to get reached by an offensive lineman. When I say don't get reached, I mean you can't let an offensive lineman be able to get inside leverage on you, turn you, and force you to fight over and sift through the trash. And unfortunately, on this play, that's what happens to Vince Williams. So we'll take a look at the center for Chicago Bears, number 55. He's able to get leverage on Williams. Williams has to come over the top. So sometimes you'll see these guys, and it looks like they're overrunning the play, and that can't happen, and it did happen in this game. But you have to be able to get over the top of the lineman, whatever it takes. You can't get, reached and leveraged by him. Otherwise, you're going to have to fight over him, and you're not going to get to the play in time. And that's what happens here. So the lineman's able to get leverage and reach Vince Williams. Williams now has to try to work over the top. By the time he does, the back's already through the hole. Williams can't make the play, and it's a big game. Similar happens with Javon Hargrave, though I think Hargrave has a good excuse. He gets pretty mugged on this play. Good face mask there, turns his helmet around, slows him up. So the combination of the front side issues, guys not staying on their feet, with some of the backside flow issues of guys getting reach, not being able to fill quickly enough, creates the big gain on this play. So there's issues, I think, personnel-wise, individually, more than a Keith Butler kind of thing. The next play we're going to look at, I think this comes on the same drive, still early first quarter. Yeah, it's 2 plays later. And this one, I'm not entirely sure what happened. I think I have a good idea because I actually saw it later in the game. But just a very basic breakdown that cannot happen if you want to be a good run defense. So what happens here is there's no force defender. So what you're going to get is there's nobody to keep this run contained to the inside. I'll run it through for you guys so you have a good idea what I'm talking about. But right here, there's no force defender. There's nobody at all to keep this run contained to the inside. The other guys generally seem to be doing their job. You have Hayward responsible for the gap here, kind of slanting down. Dupree is coming inside, which is kind of a curious thing to do, but I saw him do it later in the game, so I don't think Dupree had force defender. Who I think had force responsibility was Joe Hayden, the corner here, and he plays this a little hesitant and isn't able to make an impact and keep this run to the inside. He's kind of on his heels. He backs off. He's late reading his run pass keys, and it's a good run. It gets him a first down to set up a touchdown, which we'll look at here in a second. So I run it through again. Again, other guys can do their jobs. Hayward can do his job. Alulu can do his job, but there's no force defender there. That's an easy run for Jordan Howard to hit the edge like that. So that's my guess is the corner, and I can't remember which play exactly it was. Otherwise, I'd be able to show you. I don't want to have to try to remember and sift through it and waste your guys' time, but I'm pretty sure that's on Joe Hayden. He's supposed to be the force defender there, and it did not happen. All right, next one we're going to look at, again, sticking with the same drive. This one's kind of an easy one to talk about. The Jordan Howard touchdown. Just, this is really ugly play. I think this falls on Vince Williams. It's hard to be 100% sure, but you get the split zone action from the off-ball tight end, which the Bears do quite a bit, and it is a pretty good signal universally. Anytime you get a tight end off-ball that he might, do the split zone action, he's going to come across and kick out the end man on the line of scrimmage. But Williams follows that pretty heavily. You see him come over the top here, and this A-gap is wide open. So whether that's on Vince Williams or somebody else screwed up, I can't say for sure. But regardless of whose fault it is, I mean, anytime you leave the A-gap, without a run fit, in any situation, it's bad. But to do it inside the 5, that's as bad as it gets. So I run through it again. I mean, this does not get a whole lot easier than that. With this hole, the center, doubles up here. You get the end blocked here, and there's just a clear lane. I mean, Mitchell has no chance to be able to try to make a play there. So that's just a severe breakdown in a situation where you absolutely cannot have one, especially in the A-gap. I mean, if you're going to have them score, hit the edge at least. Give your guys a chance. The A-gap, your guys have no chance to win. All right, fourth one we're going to look at. Now I think we start looking at some stuff that's going to fall on Keith Butler. So let me pull up the play, because I think we've seen some more either communication breakdowns or, some stuff that's more on the players. All right, what we're going to get here is one of the issues I've talked about that we're getting a better look at the All-22, but I pointed out in my Monday post, from the shots that we had. Steelers start out in an over front where they're shifted to the strong side with a tight end here. Now, they do this quite a bit, especially against heavier personnel, 2 tight end, 3 tight end sets, where they do their kind of 3-4 over front, where they're shifting strong side, which is fine. I have no problem with it. The Steelers have started to do this under Keith Butler. They did it a little in 2015, his first year. They tried it against San Francisco week 2, kind of scrapped it, brought it back in 2016, did it a good bit. You're seeing another dose of it this year. I have no problem with it. What I have a problem is that how they're responding, or they're not responding to, shifts and trades and motions. So what you're going to get here is the tight end is going to trade responsibility, and now the Bears have their strength to the left side. There's no response and no shift or change by the defensive line. Safety comes down a little bit, but he was already there. So what you end up having is the Steelers are outnumbered defensively to now their weak side. They were shifted strong side. Now the Bears have forced them into an under weak front. So now the Bears are going to run to their strong side. They have the numbers. So if you count from the center over, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, plus the fullback, that's 5, against 1, 2, 3, 4 Steelers defenders. You do the math. Who has the number count here? It's the Bears. They're +1. Not a position you want to be in. So you're going to get this stretched run out of 2 back again. Now, even if you include Vince Williams, who again is trying to scrape over the top, which is he does a better job of here. You're getting the receiver involved. He's now cracking the safety, forces the cornerback to come in the run support. And defenses will always take the corner and run support because the corner generally is going to be weaker than the strong safety against the run. So again, if you add the receiver now in the equation, I mean you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blockers versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defenders. Steelers outnumbered again. So I don't think it's even really an issue of individual play here. I mean, you could point to probably some stuff happening. Vince Williams maybe not doing the best job to secure his gap, though again, you have to be able to not get reached by the offensive lineman. But they're in no position to make a play here. They're outnumbered. There's no response when the tight end shifts over. So when you're outnumbered like that, I don't care who the linemen are. I don't care who the running back is. You're going to give up a big play, and that's what happens here. So this was a reoccurring theme. It didn't always burn the Steelers. Sometimes it did work where they didn't respond to motion, and they were able to come from the backside and make some plays. But I think if I'm Baltimore this week, I'm looking at this and saying if I can get the Steelers in this front, they're not responding to the motion, they're not responding to the shift. Let's keep testing it and let's try to get the numbers advantage in our favor. That's what the Bears did here. All right, we'll go to our next play, which is going to be more of an individual issue where it's, I think, coached up pretty well, but it's just a, individual player breakdown. So what we're going to get here is, Chicolo, again, forced defender, again, keeping that run to the inside, just like we talked about last week when we talked about rush lane integrity as a pass rush. You always have to have a backside player, keeping this run, keeping those plays contained. So you're going to get that split zone action again. The tight end's going to try to kick out Chicolo. Chicolo does it fine. I think you have other guys that handle their gaps well. Hayward has A gap here. Vince Williams scrapes over the top, has B gap against the run. Now it comes down on Sean Davis. He is the C gap alley defender. The alley defender is the player responsible for the gap between the force defender, the outside defender, which is Anthony Chicolo, and the B gap spill defender, which in this case I think is Vince Williams, who's spilling the run to the outside gap. Chicolo is keeping the run to the inside gap. The C gap alley defender has to make the play. Why the strong safety spot is such a key position in Pittsburgh and across the league, they're going to be responsible for a lot of those alley fills having to come down and make the tackle. What happens here is, again, Chicolo maybe got upfield a little bit too far, but he's still forcing the play inside. There is the end around action. Chicago used that very effectively. You have Vince Williams securing his B gap, spilling the run to the C gap, but Sean Davis is way out of position, doesn't come to balance, is late reacting and reading, does not fill the gap, misses the tackle, and now Mike Mitchell has to go clean it up. That's all on Sean Davis, I think. It's not a Keith Butler thing. It's not a Chicolo thing. It's not Vince Williams, Hayward. Those guys do their jobs. It's Sean Davis that has the breakdown, does not secure his gap, does not do his job as the alley defender, and it ends up being a positive play for the Chicago Bears. So I think this is a clear example of an individual breakdown where Sean Davis has to read that better, make the play. Unfortunately, he does not. The next example we're going to look at is a 2-second thing, because again, sometimes it's not always one guy or schematic issue by Keith Butler. Some of it's just a lack of execution. Actually, I think it's the very next play. I think. Yeah, it is. This is 3rd and 2. This is a big play. Could have maybe changed the tide of the game. Just a lot of missed tackles here. I mean, it's not even really worth talking about gap responsibility and stuff like that. Steelers have this snuffed out pretty well. Jordan Howard's tackle a couple yards deep in the backfield. Steelers wind up missing 4 tackles, and the only guy who's able to make the tackle is the turf. That's really sad. So, I mean, I'll run this thing through. You get a couple good chances at him. Vince Williams misses. Sean Davis with a terrible miss. Chicolo misses. I think all in all, there's 4 missed tackles on a single play on 3rd and 2. That's comically bad. That's really unacceptable. Really frustrating. That should never happen. So sometimes it just comes down to football fundamentals of blocking and tackling, and that's certainly one instance of it. Last 2 plays we're going to look at. Again, this is going to be a similar issue to the one we talked about, the 4th one, about the Steelers being outnumbered, where they're not responding well enough to shifts and trades by the Bears, and again, it's going to get the Pittsburgh in trouble yet again. Steelers have shifted to what they're considering the strong side here, but whenever the Bears motion over the tight end, there's no shift at all. Steelers are running a fire X blitz on display, which run blitzes can be effective, especially when you have athletes like Ryan Shazier who can shoot the gap and get penetration, but it doesn't work. And now the Steelers are outnumbered to now the Bears' definite strong side and now the Steelers' weak side. So you're putting the Steelers in a bad situation and they're not responding to it. So I think this is a really good example of Keith Butler struggling and not having his guys in positions to exceed. Vince Williams is going to have the A gap here. So if you count the number of guys to the play side, which is now, from our perspective, the right side, the number of blockers the Bears have versus the number of defenders the Steelers have, the Bears have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys in the picture. And we know Shazier is responsible for the weak A gap, so he does not count. So we have Vince Williams, we have Cam Hayward, we have Anthony Chickillo. So we have 3 defenders against 6 blockers. That is just basic math, and that's about as ugly as it gets. Now, I think we have a split zone defender who comes across, so maybe he doesn't count. But either way, now you have 5 versus 3. Do the math. Who do you think's winning that matchup? The guys secure their gaps pretty good. Cam Hayward has B gap. He tries to get penetration. He's fine. Anthony Chickillo, you could argue he needs to squeeze his play a little bit better, but he's got force defender. So he does his job there. You have Vince Williams in the A gap, Shazier in the A gap. That's all good. The guys do their jobs. It's just an issue of schematics and not having enough defenders to that side, not responding to the shift of the tight end that puts the Steelers in a weak underfront, and it creates this huge gap for Jordan Howard. There's no one responsible for that alley defender. Okay, we talked about Hayward as a spill guy, Chickillo as the force guy. Someone has to be that alley defender. There's no one even with that responsibility. So Howard has open grass. It's a big run. And Mitchell has to make the tackle in the open field. Again, there's the trade by the tight end. Steelers don't respond to it at all. There's no alley defender there, and it's a big run. I don't think you can blame the players for that. I don't know whose job that is and who's supposed to do what. I think the other guys carry their job out pretty well. What you end up having here is just a bunch of guys to the backside of the play that aren't doing anything. Now, again, obviously you don't know where the run's going to go. You get that split zone action, so I'm not trying to say that, I'm not trying to use hindsight as the guide here. I'm just saying, when there's that shift that happens, there's no response to it. So, of course, the Bears are going to run to their strength, the Steelers' weakness, where they clearly have numbers. So I think that really goes on Keith Butler, and that was kind of a disappointing thing. Last one we're going to look at is going to be a personnel player issue. And this one, I don't often get mad when I'm watching these plays. Usually they're kind of cathartic, and I say, I'm glad I just know what went wrong. But I actually kind of got mad at this play because I think it's so frustrating and really disappointing. And I think it's pretty clear what went wrong and who this falls on. It's going to be Artie Burns. And, the last time the Steelers kind of got run over like this, in a bad loss was Miami last year. And one of the big issues in that game was crack and replace with Artie Burns there, where, if the receiver comes down and cracks the safety, the cornerback has to assume the safety's responsibility to make that play. We talk about it as the alley defender of the C gap, which is usually the strong safety's responsibility whenever he's in the box. If that receiver cracks him, then the corner has to have that responsibility, and we don't get that here. So let me run it through and show you guys what I'm talking about. When you get this run to the outside, I think generally speaking, the guys handle their gaps pretty well. Chickillo again, force defender. Hayward's here in the B gap. Now, yes, normally J.J. Wilcox will have the C gap alley defender. But with the receiver cracking down on him, it takes him out of the picture. And now it means Artie Burns has to assume Wilcox's responsibility. There's the crack. Burns has to replace that responsibility and become the C-gap alley defender. That does not happen here, and that's the whole reason why this play breaks down. This should be a play that goes for nothing. But Burns, and I'll just show you what he does, which is nothing, and ends up being an 18-yard run. I'll just run this thing through a couple times, and I can't explain it. It's just a football breakdown. And, Burns has been better against the run. His improvement overall has been really strong. He's a physical guy. He's a guy that's not afraid to tackle and support the run. So it's not that he's chickening out here. I just think he has no idea what's going on. He doesn't realize that Wilcox been cracked by the receiver and that he's got to, fill and trade responsibilities. And so instead, he either gets stepped on or just loses his balance. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what's going through Artie Burns' head. This stuff cannot keep happening. In Pittsburgh, all 11 guys have to be able to support the run. That's been history since the 70s. There aren't any Deion Sanders or Asante Samuel types that are just pure cover guys that aren't going to support the run, that aren't going to be reliable against the run. and Burns can't be one of those guys. He's got the frame and the want-to and the desire to be a physical impact player against the run, and we've seen some of that, and it has gotten better. But on this play, we've regressed to last year, his rookie year, and those mistakes can't happen, and they certainly can't happen again. This is just stuff that's really frustrating whenever you've seen some definite progress from Artie Burns, both last year during his rookie year, into this year, from where he was at in training camp. We had a really nice training camp, and what I think he's done the first 2 weeks of the season, and still has done in coverage. His coverage has been really strong, generally speaking. But on this play, Chicolo is forcing the ball inside, Hayward spilling it to the outside, receiver cracks, corner has to replace, just does not happen. The one other quick side note I throw in there is with Ryan Shazier. I talked about earlier about how these guys can't get reached and picked off by the lineman climbing to the second level. We get a little bit of that as well, where you can get the left tackle that doubles and then climbs to the second level. I think, again, that split zone action kind of freezes Shazier for a second. You see him kind of cut inside right here. And by the time he reacts to it, that left tackle is able to get to the second level, get square, and force Shazier to have to try to work through the trash and come over the top. And it slows him up enough that he can't be able to meet the running back as he gets through the hole, and he does not have an impact on the play. So I think the main issue is definitely with Artie Burns, because if Burns does his job, this run goes nowhere. But it's also a secondary issue with Ryan Shazier, where you can't get reached by these linemen on these zone blocks, and it happens here, and Shazier pays the price for it. So that's really bad. That's really ugly. That's not on Keith Butler. It's not on Chicolo. It's not on Hayward. I think that's like 95% on Artie Burns for just a completely just brain fart. I don't even know how to explain it. It's frustrating. I hope it doesn't happen again. It cannot happen again. This is basic stuff. This is cracker plays. They talked about it last year after the Dolphins game. They were talking about it after this Bears game, that they failed in that regard. Just stuff that cannot happen. So thank you guys for watching. If you have any comments about the run defense, or if you want to talk about the offense, I was going to talk about Big Ben, but some of that stuff I just didn't think would have been best visualized with some of the camera angles that Chicago has. They have really bad camera angles for the aerial shots. They just look like broadcast shots. But we can definitely do that if you really want to see some of the issues that Roethlisberger had. But I thought, anytime you give up this many yards against the run, my voice is cracking. It's really hot in my room right now. I'm trying to get through the last bit of this video, but this is a really important point to talk about. And we go through all these 8 plays we've looked at, and we see the variety of issues. But I think there are several times where you've had just some clear breakdowns by players, but also Keith Butler not putting his guys in positions to succeed. So I hope that changes. I hope adjustments get made, because Baltimore, they've run these zone plays before and it's gotten Pittsburgh in trouble. Remember, Justin Forsett had some pretty good days against the Steelers on some of these outside zone concepts. You just can't allow this many yards against the run and expect to win, no matter who the opponent is. So hopefully that gives a little bit more clarity on what went wrong against Chicago, and hopefully it'll get addressed in the future. If it does, we'll talk about it, and if it doesn't, we certainly will revisit this topic. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.